IVM.
Cred has made paying your credit card bill both easy and fun. By just paying your credit card bill on Cred, you stand a chance to win some amazing rewards, cashbacks, and a whole lot more. So don't miss out, just download Cred. Welcome to Simplify.
Welcome to Simplify.
You too. I can't. Tony Naren, very bad. Naren was supposed to be.
One duet only happened.
Naren was supposed to be the musical one of the lot.
Okay, should we start again or is this like...
No. This is completely fine.
What?
Also a tagline for Simplified. Should we start again? Episode 1. I wonder if that happens in real life. You know, like when we play video games, like sometimes when we start the first 10 seconds of that, you get killed in the first 10 seconds, the other team scores a goal. So they're like, no, I'm going to start again. That was only practice. Just imagine if you could do that with life. Just imagine if you could do that with life. Like Tony, you and I famously
What would you do different? What would you do?
Yeah, like Tony and I got off famously on the wrong foot, no? When we met for the first time. Imagine if we could. No, we did not.
Oh, okay. No, but
wow, I actually got tension.
I sometimes think like, as many unfortunate people do, I work in advertising and digital marketing. So in that, you have these, you end up seeing a lot of graphs of view-through rate, where the view-through rate drops after a point of time based on the video progression and all that. It'd be really interesting to see the drop-off rate for Simplified, no? Like, where is that drop-off happening? Like, probably in this episode when I started laughing like a maniac, like there's a huge dip over there where people started dropping off.
So Shrike, there's a reason why we don't ask our producer for analytics. Right? So ignorance is bliss, I would like to.
But there's that whole like Indian middle class sunk cost fallacy that keeps it going. No? Like if you order like a bad juice, I once ordered like what is called butterfruit shake. I had no idea what the damn thing was. Like it was the most expensive thing on the
butterfruit shake.
Yeah, it's avocado, no? So like this was back in my early like college days or something when I gulped down colas by the cans, but. So I had one sip of it and it was the most awful thing that I had tasted. But I had already paid 80 rupees for it, so I had to finish. So
yeah, and 80 rupees when we were in college was like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
wait, but 1 second. The news is avocado is referred to as butterfruit.
Yeah.
Where is this from?
It's what it is in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah. So if you say avocado in Malayalam, it means it's for her. So also guacamole.
I was just about to say.
Guacamole is what?
Mole is
Guacaboy.
Mole is like daughter. So.
Yeah. Otherwise, let me put this in language that Naren will understand. Guaca 6.023 into 10 raised to guacamole.
That is the avocado number.
Oh, beautiful. I was actually going for guacamole, but okay. I did not complete. This is what happens when your college is in Thrissur instead of Lokhandwala. You don't learn about things like avocado and all, tell you.
Yeah.
I love how we
the
actually
sunk cost fallacy is
as our intro.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. It's
Incredible.
Middle class. You end up, so you have two pain points now. First, it was hurting because you paid the money. Now it's hurting because you paid the money and you ate the garbage. That's what you're hurting in
Also a tagline for Simplified.
Oh man, I'm guaranteed. Imagine if there is a new listener who got to this point. They're like, what happened? What happened to my day? Why am I here?
Our two sets of audiences are some loyal listeners, I don't know why, and people who study like social experiments, like scientists, looking at cultural phenomenon to see.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, if you look at the set of Simplified listeners and the set of masochists in India, like that is like full like common set.
No, actually, a set of Simplified listeners is a set of people who have started thinking about what is the meaning of life. They are almost the same. Because life has no meaning, neither is Simplified.
Yeah,
so
they've broken out of the top of the Maslow's hierarchy and gotten into another space beyond self-actualization.
Yeah. We are the Dogecoin of podcasts.
Incidentally, my son told me that he bought $2 worth of Dogecoin as a joke.
Okay. Oh,
long back.
Congratulations.
$200 now.
Beautiful.
Oh my!
And if he had originally, like, somebody had dared him to put $1,000 in it.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So he's like, I would have retired and come back.
Yeah. Then Naren at the beginning of this episode will be like, "Hey, sorry, I'm just having trouble getting Wi-Fi here in the Bahamas." So So I have joined Tony in the crypto world. So I have put in a little bit of money over the course of the week. Let's see how things. Let's see how things go.
I
think
Ethereum or
both Bitcoin and Ethereum actually. I put in both.
Oh.
Yeah, but Naren, I was saying like how the new Indian parental response has changed to when your friend asked you to jump into the well, why didn't you? Like,
Why didn't you?
No. Now the mentality is before you jump into the well, there's a Byju's course for this. You finish that and then you see the exact angle through which you can jump. All right, we are supposed to talk about something else during this episode.
Yeah,
something
that is also could be a tagline for Simplified.
What? Take a Byju's course.
No, we were supposed to talk about something else in this episode.
So,
Naren, what are we talking about today? Something topical?
We're going to talk about something which is all around us, something which we need, something which we cannot live without. And that's not WhatsApp. That is, WhatsApp is a good answer, but it's not WhatsApp. It's oxygen, right? So, and I've been wondering because everyone's been going on and on about how oxygen is not available enough, and it's people are dying because of the lack of it. And so I decided to just sort of rifle through the internet and see what was available, and it's pretty interesting, the entire story of oxygen itself. So first, I have to say that for the longest period, it went by the very awesome name of dephlogisticated air. So oxygen was called
dephlogisticated.
Yeah, oxygen itself.
Yeah. So there was something called phlogiston theory, which said that if there is phlogiston in something, then it burns, and then the phlogiston, it was that kind of thing. So phlogiston was something that was in the substance that needed to be burned, and when that left, that whatever was being burned, combustion happened, burning happened. And Simplified should totally have been around back then because people swallowed that. So think of what we could have got away with.
Wow.
Actually, we were the ancient Greek podcast that wasn't.
So Simplified Phlogiston sounds like a country where corporal punishment is allowed or something.
Totally. Actually, we should. There are several countries which qualify for Phlogiston.
Including the Indian middle class itself, actually. Phlogiston.
When we were kids, we lived in Phlogiston.
Now we are in Logicstan.
Wow.
In the fact. And so there's this guy named Carl M. Scheel, whose name is pronounced Sheila. So Carl M. Sheila.
Now we know how you got into this topic.
This is Naren's wife, for all those who are wondering why.
Sheila is the light of. She's the tree on which hangs the fruit of my life. That's.
The rest of us are not quite sure how to take off from there. So let's just start a new sentence.
Just quickly note the timestamp of the episode right now so you can bookmark and narrate.
But what we forgot to tell our listeners was we had to cancel the previous recording because Naren forgot his anniversary. So take all of what just preceded us.
There is good reason for that.
It was literally the previous night, and I told Sheila that I had to wake up in the morning early because I have a record. Yeah, are you out of your mind? It's our anniversary. Panic texting. Luckily, all my
Did she
co-hosts already
say,
understand.
I am your most loyal listener. You better schedule a recording.
Very good, very good. This is such a.
This is
This is
catharsis in action.
Yeah. This is an old joke, no? Like you never remember our anniversary. Like, of course, this is the day in which Arsenal won the cup or something like that. So, so something of that.
But
sort.
Carl
yeah.
and Sheila.
Yeah, Carl and Sheila found out that, he sort of discovered, he heated up some mercuric oxide with something, and he produced oxygen, and he didn't know what it was. And it took the genius of Antoine Lavoisier 3 years. So this happened in 1770 something, and Antoine Lavoisier really figured it out. So he was the guy who named it oxygen because it was generating oxides and things like that. And,
Hey,
so basically, Sheila ki jawani was well spent.
Actually,
no. Oxygen probably means life in Greek or something like that. It's not. So then the oxidation thing came later. Yeah. So Lavoisier got the Nobel Prize of that time, which is the guillotine. So he got. I mean, you do your research, you find out oxygen and the world.
Wow.
You even prove that it's an element, and so you take a piece of tin and burn it in a closed space and weigh it and find that the mass has not changed, and you sort of prove that whatever was in the air has now gone into that and become oxide.
Wow.
And the government says, yes, shortlist.
Literally to shorten, short list.
So actually, there's Naren, while you were talking about that, I actually found the very interesting etymology of oxygen. That oxygen actually comes from the Greek, which is oxys, which is sharp acid. Because when the Lavoisier actually discovered oxygen as such, he thought it was essential for the formation of acids. It was an ingredient which was essential for formation of acid. That's why he named it oxygen, which is actually a misnomer. So basically, the word oxygen itself has nothing to do with what oxygen is supposed to do in any way.
Yeah.
Should petition for name change of oxygen.
So anyway, I found that so totally sad that this guy had to be.
Yeah.
He was a minor aristocrat apparently, and that's why he went into the.
Well, he became even more minor.
Yeah, he became even more minor.
But this is post-Renaissance and all, no? So guillotining was...
Yeah, it was. When was the French Revolution? Sometime 1799 or something, right? So yeah, so that's when. So it's like. It wasn't sort of the Nobel Prize for the oxygen. It was the sort of prize for being whatever minor tax collector that he was.
You know why they call it French? You know why they call it the French? You know why they call it the French Revolution? No, because there were so many heads that were chopped. Heads were rolling. Heads were revolving. Revolution.
Have you know?
From tax
too soon, Naren. It's been 2
7 in the morning. I have the rest of the day breakfast
like
to eat, and I'm going to picture heads rolling down the gutter.
Well, I hope you have a vegetarian.
No.
But actually, it was very macabre. There were people who would do all kinds of. So there would be, sort of. It would be a public spectacle, and when the head was lopped off, people would go and try to see what. So oftentimes the head would still be like, the eyes would still be moving.
Oh, that's cheerful. Yeah.
Beautiful. They would slap the face and see the the color on the face change.
Oh, nice.
Is this science or just like...
No, it is really. It is. So the brain takes a couple of seconds to. So you will pass off. So if you if someone strangles you, you become unconscious because the brain isn't getting any oxygen, and it takes a couple of seconds for that to happen because the blood that's already there in the brain is oxygenated. So
very nice. And can we quickly use that as our opportune segue to the topic back?
Yes.
And we need a lot of oxygen. It is element number 8, and it weighs 1.4 grams per liter. And we need a lot of it. So at 1.4 grams, just 1.4 grams per liter, we end up requiring 7 kilos of it per day per person, each of us. So we need 7 kilograms. We need 7 kilograms of air actually, which contains about 21% of oxygen, but we need that. And that's the thing. That's the number that appears in the calculations, because when someone is down with something like COVID and your lung capacity is seriously compromised. So normally air has 21% of oxygen and the rest of it is mostly nitrogen. Some 78% is nitrogen and 1% is everything else, carbon dioxide, everything. And it takes, the body takes it in, it throws out the nitrogen and takes in the oxygen. And if your lungs are damaged, that's not enough. So you need a lot more. And that's why we are going to talk about how oxygen is concentrated and how. So had COVID happened maybe 100 and something years ago, all of us would have died because, all patients would have probably, who had got complications, would have died because no one knew how to concentrate oxygen. No one knew how to capture. So Michael Faraday tried it, right? So Michael Faraday was playing around with different gases and he tried compressing those gases and several of them liquefied. But some gases, most frustratingly, wouldn't liquefy at all. They just wouldn't become, no matter how much pressure you put it under, they wouldn't liquefy. And then he figured out they also need to be cooled. So it's just not enough. So you can have any amount of pressure so these gases, oxygen was one of them, nitrogen was the other, hydrogen was another. He called them permanent gases. He said that they're never going to liquefy. And then there was this guy named Charles Linder. And Linder was, he was like an expert on refrigeration at that time.
Expert on?
Refrigeration.
Okay.
So this is much later than Faraday. Of course, it's I think turn of the century. He figured out how to how to cool things, and he was the guy who really found that he could liquefy air, make it completely liquid, and then he could boil off everything that wasn't required. And so he made oxygen by that. So he liquefied air and 78% of nitrogen and let it go. And he would be left with oxygen.
Pure oxygen, yeah.
Pure liquid oxygen, which I guess could then be converted into gas. Yeah.
No, this is 2 steps, right? First is you heat it.
Yeah. No, you liquefy the air to minus 200 and...
wow.
More than what your average...
Slightly colder than your
average fridge, yeah.
And then how do they separate out?
It's fractional distillation, a double column fractional distillation. You just sort of start evaporating.
Like petroleum,
Chuck knows all about it. Chuck,
I was hoping nobody would bring up my chemical engineering
Chuck's nightmare, Chuck's nightmare is that someone will ask him.
See, you have already used the keywords that I was planning to use. You said fractional distillation, you said Faraday, and Shriketh also said the etymology of oxygen. So I have nothing else to say. Hell-Volhard-Zelinsky reaction, alpha bromination. Just keep throwing.
Now you might as well do that. From the old first AIB sketch, sing Faraday.
That's why it's stuck in my head.
Oh man.
But Naren, this is the same process still followed, or?
Yeah, so it's called the Linder-Frankel process. Frankel as in Viktor Frankl. We spoke about that a few episodes ago.
Meaning of
life. But it wasn't Viktor Frankl. I went nuts trying to find out who the Frankel in the Linder-Frankel was. There's no record of that on the internet.
Really?
So if anyone finds out, please let me know. I studied engineering knowing that as Linder-Frankel process.
Seriously?
And that's because it's very important for steel making. So steel making is my field, right? So steel making, there's an interesting story about that. If I may indulge it, it has tangentially to do with oxygen and nothing to do with oxygen concentrators. But here's the story. So there is, during the end of the World War, there was an Austrian town named Linz. Linz and Donauwitz, 2 Austrian towns. And the Allies, so it was this particular area came under the Americans. And their brief was to dismantle the industrial military complex of the Germans, because they didn't want the Germans to, come back to, ever be a threat again, a military.
Right.
So this, what am I saying? Linz and Donowitz. Linz and Donowitz are two places. And Linz was the site of a steel plant where like some revolutionary steel making was happening. They were making a lot of steel and really good quality steel and used for tanks and things like that. And they wanted to dismantle it. Dismantle it means just sort of take all the machinery and break it into bits with a big hammer. So there was this guy named Robert Dürer who went to the American general in charge and told him that I strongly recommend that we don't make it because we are on the verge of doing something that will revolutionize the steel industry. It will give you a lot of very good, inexpensive steel, which will be great for your automotive industry. So immediately, Americans' ears stood up, and he gave Robert Dürer, a few years. So it took him 3 years to perfect it, and it's called the Linz-Donowitz process, and it's the process which is used for practically all the steel making in the world today. And it's also called basic oxygen steel making. And what Robert Dürer did was he improved the Bessemer converter process, which is basically taking a whole bunch of iron ore and limestone, whatever, and heating it with air, right? So Robert Dürer figured out how to sort of pump oxygen into it, and that would take away almost all the impurities that would remain in the Bessemer process. And you get extremely pure. And it's not as trivial as it sounds, because when they were doing it, the oxygen would just sort of oxidize the surface of the melt and go away. So Dürer figured out the engineering of how to pump the oxygen and how to make sure that it bubbled through. It was technically very, very difficult, but he managed that. And he just about made it. Like on Tuesday, the plant is going to be dismantled, and Monday night, like the first heat comes, that kind of thing. So,
this is classic. The best inspiration is caused by last minute panic.
Entire generation of engineers can relate to that. They got their degrees because of that.
It's good to know that it wasn't just my chemical engineering batch, but as far back as Mr. Burke, who are you talking about? Yeah. Anyway, where were we?
So the thing that really made it possible was the Linde-Frankel process, because Linde-Frankel made oxygen available at very, very high purity at very low cost. So once you put up the plant, it was very inexpensive relatively to make the oxygen. And had that not been there, we'd never had. So because you had such excellent steel, you could make steel sheets thinner and, sort of shape them into the car shapes that you got. And that made cars lighter, that made them more efficient, that made them more inexpensive. And the automotive revolution, because from the 50s to today, it's just been, cars in relative terms, they've really diminished and become cheaper if you adjust it for inflation. So.
And mostly because you don't need the 2 horses anymore.
Yeah. So that was, and even today, that is the major use of oxygen in India, in industry. So steel making is...
Oh, really?
Yeah. India makes some 7,000 metric tons of oxygen per day, out of which some 5,000 or 6,000 is used for steel making.
So that makes sense then, because I saw this some news about how the Tata plant was sending a whole bunch of oxygen to places where it was needed, and I was wondering
that. It's a big decision for them, because if they have to decouple the oxygen from their blast furnace are humongous. They have to shut it down. You can't just turn off the gas. You have to, it's like it takes a long time for the blast furnace to be wound down. Also, it takes a long time for it to start again. So it's very committal. So if they've shut down a blast furnace, they have taken a big hit in the wallet. So all respect to the Tatas and all the steel plants who have done that. It
we
is.
also don't make steel.
Yeah,
we also don't make steel. Well done. That's actually a great campaign idea.
That would be an amazing short-term campaign. Like I imagine a front page ad with that. We also don't make steel and talking about that.
By the way, Naren, I have actually seen the Tata Steel blast furnace. I did my summer internship, not during chemical engineering, but like a hipster at Mica, I decided to go to Tata Steel and do my internship, which was in Tata Nagar, which is of course Jamshedpur ka OG name. And I saw the famous Tata Steel blast furnace. And you're right, it's quite an occasion of it either turning, shutting it down is not a simple two-step process on Windows.
It's not.
It's quite something else, and it's bloody hot.
No, I used to have a computer which took forever to shut down. Blast furnace is probably like that.
Probably like
now that we are all done with the science part of steel making, it's a good time to reveal that I'm actually a metallurgical engineer. And
as a chemical engineer and a metallurgical engineer.
Panic flashbacks to iron carbide diagrams.
So you probably studied all this LD process and everything.
I probably
Naren, stop putting us on the spot. Holding our past against us.
I know, he's like engineering shaming you.
Ask Sriket about Shakespeare or something. You study English literature or something, no?
Hey man.
But I find of all the things I've studied, I find metallurgy the most fascinating, especially the metallurgy of steel. It's like insane the things people have done and found out and things like that. It's just
same as medical oxygen, or is there a difference?
They need to remove some things from there are trace amounts of things like radon gas and all these. So radon is, I think, carcinogenic and in small amounts. So it's probably not. So it's there in the air we breathe right now. So there are trace amounts of all those harmful gases. But when you give it to a patient, you don't want whose health is compromised. You don't want them. So you don't want them getting all this rubbish. So you take this gas is 99% pure. The gas that you put into the steel plant is 99% or better in purity. But medical oxygen is still passed through a number of membrane filters and sort of molecular sieves and things like that to make sure all the undesirable stuff is out. And only if you follow that process is it certified as medical oxygen. And to be clear, if you needed oxygen right now if it's a life and death thing, you would be perfectly fine taking steel plant oxygen or the oxygen from a cylinder for an oxyacetylene flame, which was actually the biggest application when Linde actually discovered it. It was oxygen and acetylene was terrific for cutting steel. So you made that flame and you could cut through steel, and that was a revolution. So that's what it's used for. And you can use that oxygen straight away and save a life.
I'm wondering if, when we go scuba diving, they have those little tanks, right? I mean, literally smaller tanks that we go underwater with. And when they come on to show, those are refilled using, I guess, a compressor or something.
Yeah.
We really don't know what happens after that. I'm wondering if those can be repurposed to...
Basically, all of metallurgy, I think 90% of metallurgy is like steel making. Yeah.
So and I think more and more ashamed by the minute.
Final year or so, my professor assessed that this is one guy who will be a permanent gas. So I promptly went up into MBA.
Yeah.
Okay, Naren, let us concentrate on oxygen. See what it is.
One question, Naren. So the same oxygen made in a steel plant is...
They probably can, right?
They have very little. So they have something like 200 or 400 liters of oxygen or something.
Yeah.
So you need some 5 to 10 liters of oxygen per minute. So it'll just give you, something like half an hour or 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the capacity. I'm supposed to know all the physics of this because I've got that certification. But
how long are your dives?
So that's the thing. So if we go down, it depends on how long we stay underwater. But typically, if we are staying to say 20 meters, that should last a good diver somewhere from 50 to 60 minutes. And I say good only because sometimes you panic underwater and you breathe more, and that 50 minutes becomes closer to 30 minutes. But I
guess you cannot, under any circumstances, touch that limit, right? Because if you run out of oxygen, pass out.
Yeah. So there's a hard stop. So you have to, like, around 15 or 20% of your tank. Once it reaches that critical limit, no matter what you are, where you are, how beautiful the sights are, you have to
surface.
You have to surface. And there's another thing where you always have to be diving in groups of 2, as in you always have what is called a buddy. So yeah, I'm surprised you know this trick. If you, for whatever reason, some problem happens, either you run out of oxygen or the thing that takes the oxygen from the tank to your mouth is not working, you actually, whenever you dive, you actually carry 2 regulators, as they're called. The thing that goes in the mouth. So there's always 2. And the purpose of the second one is, one, it acts as a backup for yourself, and 2, if somebody else needs it, then you attach them, and then there's a very beautiful dance that you do, and then you have to hold hands, and then you have to surface up together. And the reason I asked also is because all these scuba diving places are usually in remote locations, right? So that might actually, those compressors that these diving shops have might actually be good places to get decent breathable oxygen in remote locations which don't have access to hospitals or formal medical care as such.
So in these things make oxygen, or it just
so Lind process is when you actually sort of generate oxygen, sort of you
make pure oxygen.
And actually, even Lind Frankel doesn't generate oxygen. This takes atmospheric oxygen and purifies it. Yeah. If you wanted to generate it, you would have to electrolyze water, or you would have to do something else. And, in the olden days, they used to take some minerals and heat them with other minerals, and then the reaction would release oxygen or trap all that oxygen. It's really very inefficient, so no one does that. But somewhere in the 80s or the 70s, I think, someone figured out that you could pass gas through molecular sieve, a porous material which allows some molecules to pass and some not to. And you could remove nitrogen from it and enrich the oxygen. So this was called, it's adsorption basically. So adsorption is not absorption. Adsorption is when the surface captures the molecule of whatever you're trying to capture. And they did a clever bit of engineering called pressure swing adsorption. So you take the air, you push it through this molecular sieve, through this, it's actually like a stone, okay, one stone which is very porous. So you pass it through that stone and under high pressure. So the air is forced in, the nitrogen is trapped on the stone, the oxygen passes through. And then when you release the pressure, the stone gives up the nitrogen. So the nitrogen comes back, but you send it through another port. So that's the exhaust. And you have 2 such cylinders. So in one, you pressurize one cylinder and it starts generating oxygen. And then you release the pressure. It starts giving the nitrogen that it has trapped, it gives it back. But now you change the pressure so that it shoots the nitrogen back the other end. And when this is happening, you use the other cylinder to generate, there's another cylinder. So now the pressure is diverted there through a valve. So it's very clever engineering. And they did that, and it took them a little while. The first, they didn't figure out on pressure. They did something called temperature swing absorption. So you can do the same thing by raising and decreasing temperatures, but raising and decreasing temperatures is very clunky. It doesn't happen very quickly. It takes time. And changing pressures is very easy. It's just a matter of having valves. So they did that, and that became a big boon for the medical industry. So hospitals still use oxygen cylinders, and people have banks of oxygen cylinders which are connected to a manifold, and they have pressure reducing valves and everything. They're still dangerous. That's one of the reasons why we've been seeing fires in COVID centers.
Oh,
okay. That's because the enriched oxygen makes every little spark a potential, like the flames, it fans the flames, actually, the oxygen-rich atmosphere. So if you have any leaky oxygen, you're sitting on a fire hazard right there. And it is...
So in fact, just now there was I was reading about a fire that was that happened in, I think, Iraq. And where in one of the hospitals, the same thing, it was in the ICU, and the reason the fire like spread so quickly and like had that thing was because, as you see with ICU wards, they have that what they call the drop ceiling, right, with all the medical equipments in the ceiling and stuff. So they were actually passing oxygen through the ceiling. So that's where when the fire like started, like it literally like engulfed the whole place because it was going through the ceiling across the board.
Wow.
So where the oxygen, because it was going through that. So I mean, oxygen, and to be fair, that's also, I mean, the most famous oxygen leak of all time is Apollo 13. So Apollo 13, when it was the whole thing about the lunar module was one of the, so they have to regularly stir the oxygen tanks, right? So during one of the stirs of the oxygen tanks, there was a small spark somewhere which caused the entire main module to explode and one entire fuel cell to explode. And that's the whole reason that was the most successful failure ever, because they got it back to Earth eventually. So yeah, that's I mean, oxygen is dangerous stuff to play with.
But the funny thing is, by itself, oxygen is not flammable.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
Because when something burns, something combines with oxygen. So oxygen doesn't combine itself. So oxygen doesn't burn. But it sure as hell helps everything else to burn. So
it's the greatest catalyst ever.
Yeah. So it's there. It's dangerous. And so that's one of the things.
So in space, you actually like take in pure oxygen, is it?
You would store oxygen and...
no, I think it was oxygen and hydrogen. They create water, right? Oxygen and hydrogen. So I think the hydrogen is flammable. The hydrogen exploded and the oxygen really enabled it.
Yeah. And hydrogen itself is it's so small. The molecules are so small. It's extremely difficult to contain it in anything. It'll literally ooze out through the interstices of anything that you hold to, use to hold hydrogen. So hydrogen, that's one of the reasons why hydrogen in fuel cells still haven't made it to everyday life. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a great solution. So you make like the same Linde-Frankel process can also be used to make hydrogen. You can actually, purify, concentrate, use it to any number of gases. Nitrogen also manufactured the same way. And you could have like tanks of that. So 1 tank of hydrogen, 2 tanks of oxygen, in your this thing, just enough to make or 2 tanks of hydrogen, 1 tank of oxygen actually. And you just make water and keep going. But these are huge technical problems that still haven't been overcome. We can write, amazing code to do machine learning and everything like that, but we cannot figure out how to hold hydrogen in a tank. That's...
it's because all these chemical and metallurgical engineers are
doing
Oh man.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So that is a big thing. Hospitals still use a similar kind of, pressure swing adsorption plant to generate oxygen on site. So a big hospital will have that plant in its basement and it will be generating oxygen, holding it in cylinders and piping it throughout the hospital. That's why when you go to a hospital, you see those little yellow lines which have oxygen in them. But for most people, the oxygen concentrator is a lot safer. You could have that in your home and not run any risk. And that works on the same principle, except that the pressures involved are far lower. So it's not dangerous in any way. And the trade-off is it doesn't give you all that much oxygen. So if you got really bad lung damage due to COVID, the maximum that most top-of-the-line oxygen concentrators can give you, the home use one, are 10 LPM. And someone was telling me that even 10 LPM, won't be enough.
If you're in ARDS, you need 60 liters per minute.
So those, so moderate infections are the only ones that can be taken care of by the...
And just to be sure, Naren, these at-home oxygen concentrators, what do they concentrate? They just take in air, like air purifier or something?
They push it through something known as a zeolite. Which is an interesting thing. It's a stone. It's a ceramic thing. It's porous. Okay. And zeolites are designed. Okay. So zeolites occur naturally, but natural zeolites have a lot of imperfections. So they actually make that in the lab. So it's a, media, and you pass the air through it. It grabs all the nitrogen or as much nitrogen as it can hold. So the oxygen that comes out is almost, I think, 90 or 95% pure, better than 90%.
Tell.
and then it sort of just reverses. It has two of these things. So when one guy is pressurized, the other guy is not pressurized. So it's releasing its nitrogen and venting it out to the atmosphere. And then that one shuts off and that gets pressurized. So the earlier chamber is now releasing the nitrogen that it grabbed. And it works pretty well. Yeah.
Got it. I just realized one difference between all this and the scuba diving tanks I was talking about. The tanks actually have the concentration proportion as regular air, because I just realized you're actually breathing underwater. So it's still a 2178 thing. In some exceptional cases, the oxygen concentration is slightly more with some slightly advanced techniques. There's something called nitrox where the concentration is slightly different, so you can stay underwater longer. But yeah, I just realized that it's not concentrated oxygen you're taking down there, in which case it would be a very released sport.
That'll be the same for space.
That's what. Yeah. I'm guessing.
I don't know what will happen if you have continuously oxygen-rich air that you breathe. I'm sure that's not good for you because but I haven't checked that out. I don't know what.
Yeah, don't also please just keep 2178 is good for the time being.
So oxygen concentrators have been available in India for a long time. Interestingly, I had got one for my dad who passed away in February, and we gave it up because we didn't need it. Never thought it'd be so bad. I mean, had I known, I would have kept it here. It costs in the vicinity of 50 or 60,000 rupees, and the higher end one can go to more than lakh and a half. And a lot of people are choosing to keep one at home. And so I asked one of my doctor friends, and he said it won't work if you really get a bad case of COVID. It won't be usable. Oxygen concentrator is just not going to. So still, the Indian government has placed an order for some 100,000 concentrators to be supplied to, which also looks woefully small. But
how much does an average oxygen concentrator, like how much do they make per day, sort of thing?
So if you have a 10 LPM one and somebody is moderately
struggling with low oxygen,
then a 10 LPM one can support 2 patients.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But only as long as it is moderate, because if it becomes critical, severe. So this lung damage thing is pretty sudden. And this is what I've sort of understood. One of my close friends suffered from COVID. He was absolutely fine. He was lucky to be in a hospital at that time, in a COVID hospital. He had a little bit of lung damage and everything. Everything was fine. And all of a sudden, he started passing out. And the doctors were alert. And they checked his, vitals, and they found that for some reason it had really taken off, the reaction, that cytokine storm. So they rushed him. They put him into an ICU. He was completely cut off from the world because his only means of coming is COVID wards have very strict protocols. So no one can go in and no one can come out. And he says literally the only thing they would tell his family was whether he was alive or dead. That's it.
Wow.
Like better, worse, nothing. So the patient is still alive. That's it. So the family was panicking, everything. But, they worked on him for 3 days and then they brought him back. He says he learned from the doctor later that they lose a lot of patients like that because no matter how much oxygen they pump in, it's not enough. And the breathing chemistry blood chemistry is complicated. You breathe in oxygen and you think that that's it, right? So if you get enough oxygen, but that's not the only thing. You also have to discharge carbon dioxide. So if it's not a two-way process, if there's a carbon dioxide buildup in your blood, that itself creates toxicity and you will die from that. So when the lung area, a lot of the lung is damaged, that process, the removal of carbon dioxide is also a problem. So it's not just giving oxygen rich air. So they have, these, the medical protocols have all that built in. They have drugs, they have techniques or whatever. But still, if it's more than a certain level of damage, there is nothing they can do as of now. You just die. So there is a small element of just luck. If you're lucky, you make it. If not, you die.
And I see that there are some organizations working on open source designs for oxygen concentrators. Like Makers Asylum is actually crowdsourcing the development of one, and they're trying to raise 50 lakhs for this, and they've made some progress already. And it looks very jugaad, but it still looks like
so conceptually it's very simple. The only problem with all conceptually simple things is that for applications like this, it better work. Right. So you don't want it working for like 30 minutes and then it stops working because then you're dead.
And
so
what is a ventilator? Is it the same thing that is used to administer oxygen, or is there a different?
Ventilator also forces in the air and takes it out. So there's also there is a little bit of So that is used. So there are different kinds. There are invasive ventilators, non-invasive ventilators, ventilators which pressurize. Most ventilators have that. So they have a little compressor, little pump inside, which can force air into your lungs, especially for patients. My father had one, and that was because his lungs were, his chest muscles weren't strong enough to, make his lungs inflate and deflate. So he needed help on that. And there is the oxygen enrichment part of it, which is the supply side, which the ventilator doesn't do. So you need enriched oxygen supply, and then you need a mechanism to make sure that the lungs are inflated and deflated at the right time.
It's interesting you said supply, because Tony, I don't know if you read yesterday's edition of the Nut Graph, which is a newsletter that the Ken sends, which is about oxygen, and it talks about how it's relatively easy to produce, but it's a distribution that's a huge problem, and that's the problem that India is facing right now. It's really not an oxygen generation problem; it's an oxygen distribution problem. In fact, states like Chhattisgarh are actually oxygen positive in the sense that they are producing more oxygen than they need. But the problem is getting the damn stuff from Chhattisgarh to other states or even localities within Chhattisgarh itself that need it. So it's a distribution problem in India more than a generation problem, which is why, like BMC is trying to build so many oxygen centers so that it's easier to transport and all that. So the logistics of this are quite interesting and challenging, I guess. Is that something that's unique to the situation that we are going through right now? Or is it like, it should have been there? Like India famously underspends on medical
infrastructure.
So what little I know, and this is something which is charged with politics and it's not dangerous territory, but I think people seriously thought that they had, COVID had gone away. Just 3 months ago. No one really saw this coming. This is why now there's a mad scramble, and it does look like it will come under control. So it's not like the doomsday pictures are also not correct. It's like the way you and I can, if you just go through most social media sites, you feel that the whole world is going to be crumbling and everyone's going to die, and it'll be one of those dystopian worlds where you're the only one who have to rebuild civilization from scratch. That's not likely to happen.
The situation where any of the four of the hosts we have to rebuild is not. That's the dystopian part.
So because nothing like the distribution problem is classic. So pressurized oxygen, liquid oxygen, if you want to convert it into a form which is deliverable to a patient, you need a whole lot of really reliable and sophisticated equipment in between. And that equipment you can't go and buy on Amazon. It needs to be, and even Amazon is not delivering right now.
Do you know who India's largest producer of medical grade oxygen is right now?
I read about this. Unbelievable.
It's Reliance. RIL now produces 11% of India's total production, meeting the needs of 1 in every 10 patients. Okay, so clearly not PR as well. But
and in similar and equally surprising news, Naren, you talked about the molecular sieve earlier, and as well as producing oxygen concentrators. Do you know who invented the molecular sieve? Which company invented the molecular sieve and started producing the first oxygen concentrators?
I'm going to say 3M.
It was Union Carbide.
Yeah, Union Carbide.
Yes.
That is irony on steroids, man.
Wow.
Yeah, Union Carbide is the other people who really discovered the principle and put it to this use.
Yeah, so they were among the first creators of that. They invented the molecular sieve, and they were the first oxygen concentrator creators.
Talking about oxygen and stocking, there's an interesting.
Oh yeah. Go for it.
Thing that happened, which is that there was a company whose share price went up from 10,000 rupees to 25,000 rupees in April. Which is called Bombay Oxygen Corporation.
Oh yeah, that's ridiculous.
Right, they have nothing to do with oxygen.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah. This is my new investment strategy, and this has happened before, right? It's happened in the US also, right? Like some Zoom technologies or something. So the company that was not Zoom, the price went up or something. Yeah, we just
but this is fitting actually, considering the name oxygen has nothing to do with what oxygen actually does.
Yeah.
So the company also has nothing to do with
good long-term estimate.
Well done. All right, Naren. Anything else on
that's
this?
That's pretty much everything from me.
Yeah, it's topical, and I've been curious about how this thing works as well. Naren, one thing we forgot to do during this episode is actually that very fitting profundity that we had. So I think for the first time, we are going to put in the profundity right at the
end of the episode.
At the end of the episode.
So this was something, Naren, you had shared earlier, and it is it's actually fairly profound as a profundity. So where it's basically there is Scrabble tiles. There's a bunch of Scrabble tiles there with a V blank R blank S, which says only I and you can break the chain of the virus. And there is a deeper profundity in that, Naren, if you want to highlight that.
So if you take the word virus, we cannot break the chain. Like only I and you can, but we can't.
Wow.
And also the point being that in this time we need to maintain social distancing, so there cannot be a we. There needs to be an I and a you.
Oh man, only. This is like so deep.
Layers and layers of profundity.
They should totally. You have to be made a president of whatever something.
I know the king of WhatsApp forwards.
King of WhatsApp forwards. Civilizations have been built on less, Naren. It's okay. All right, wonderful. Thank you for that, Naren. I hope, and as always, we hope that whoever's listening is staying safe and
stay safe, stay oxygenated. Okay.
Simplified. Bye, guys.
See you next week.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Ciet, TheWholeTruthFoods.com, and PayPal. We really do appreciate the support. On Cyrus Says, we discussed quite a bit about the local assembly elections this month. Vasanthi Hariprakash was there to talk about the West Bengal elections, and then we also spoke to Pradeep Gupta, a psephologist and author. He's the chairman and MD of Access My India. Do definitely check that episode out. Great conversation. Tune into This Round Is On Me, where Gauri Devi Dayal caught up on the latest trends in the PR industry with Archana Jain from PR Pundit. On The Habit Coach, Ashton Doctor spoke to Anandita Chatterjee. She's the founder of Travel Chatter. She's been a marketer with some large firms and has traveled to 67 countries so far. It was a RuPaul Drag Race fan club on KBCD where Farhad and Sunetro discussed the show's best moments and talents. Amber Rana was joined by celebrity fitness trainer Shivoham on New Year Kanun to discuss fitness laws and regulations in India. They talk about the laws and infrastructure that exist to protect gyms, trainers, and also consumers in the fitness industry. And on the note with Marg Inayat, we had clinical psychologist and friend of the network Sonali Gupta. She talks about ongoing mental health issues like survivor's guilt, coping with anxiety around the pandemic, and doom scrolling. And with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, host of the Empowering Series podcast on the IVM network. I happen to be a peak performance coach and leadership coach by profession, and I'm here to share with you productivity tools, life-altering techniques, and real-life hacks to help you achieve your maximum potential in everything you do, your relationships, professions, careers. So tune in every Monday to unleash your inner power. Be safe, be well, be empowered.